Hello and welcome to Cohasset Political Society's TV show. I'm Amby Tierney and I'm your host. Today we're going to be discussing the debate that happened on Monday. On the left we have Mr. Marcus Rowland and Mr. Niels Erlandson. On the right we have Mr. Jack Fechter and Mr. John Keenan. John, this was a pivotal moment for Donald Trump. How do you think he did in the debate?
Well, I think that overall he lost it, but I don't think in many swing states he will drop down by that many points, because for the first half of the debate all he talked about was how the economy is terrible, and I think that will probably resonate with a lot of white working class factory workers in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and so on.
Now, do you guys have a differing take on the debate?
No, I think Hillary did very well in the debate. She hit all the right points and managed to pull away.
Now, do you think that has anything to do with her spike in the polls in Florida, which is essentially going to be a key battleground in this election? Florida is the hinging point upon which this election turns.
Well, if it isn't, it's quite a large coincidence.
Interesting. You have any more to say?
I think that she, in all, looked more presidential than Donald Trump did. Donald Trump attempted to interrupt her many times, but she never took the bait. She kept a calm temperament the entire time.
Okay, interesting. Now, obviously, like I said before, Florida is a hinge battleground state. Donald Trump has around 260 electoral college votes if the polls were taken, or if the vote was taken today. If Hillary lost Florida to Donald Trump, he would have the 270 that he needs. Right now, if the election was happening today, Hillary would win the election. So, is there another path for Donald Trump other than Florida? I'm gonna give that over to the right.
I would say Pennsylvania is probably his most likely other path. If he can flip either Pennsylvania or Florida, then he gets over 270 and possibly start eroding the blue wall, as they say, and flip it back over to Republicans, start out with the advantage.
I would tend to agree with John in that Pennsylvania is the key state in the election.
Now, Pennsylvania only has 20 electoral college votes. So if Donald Trump won Pennsylvania, he'd still need 10 or so more to win. What other states would he have to win?
Colorado, because I think right now he stands a real good chance of winning that. I think they're within 1 or 2 points there. I think in the Real Clear Politics average, he has a 0.5% lead in the polls there. So he's looking better and better as the election draws near.
Well, in my count of Donald Trump's votes, I did count Colorado as the Trump vote. So that means he would have to win one of the blue wall states. So that's, the Northeast with New York's 29, Massachusetts is, I think it's 11, Vermont maybe, or he'd win California with California's whopping 55 votes.
I don't think he has a chance.
Yeah.
Hillary's
He's not gonna go.
locked up California for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be easier to just go for Florida.
So you all agree that Florida is the most crucial state in this election.
Florida's his only
Yes.
option if he wants to win this, but he's not going to.
Now, why would you say that?
Just the demographics that are down there, the retirees that are still voting.
You want to contest that?
Well, I think that Donald Trump has a brand of populism that, pretty much, he's built for Florida, his message. I think he has sort of I don't have the words, the right finesse, as it were, to appeal to people in Florida.
You don't think he has the right
No, I
opinion?
think he has the right.
I disagree because of the larger Hispanic population there, that he is definitely offended through his statements.
You're right. I don't think he has done as much outreach to the Hispanic community as Republicans in the past have. But I think that if he were to start outreaching and talking more about the economy in areas where Hispanic populations are larger, he could sway some of those voters.
I think a key demographic for voting, Hillary pretty much has locked up all non-white voters, because that's just a classic demographic for the Democrats. But I think the way that Trump can turn around if he gets more women voters to go out and vote for him.
He certainly has made a lot of effort in getting women voters. He made a comment on his Twitter. He said that violent video games should be banned. Now,
He's
don't
also-
laugh, but I think that this is more of a target towards the middle-aged women who are looking, are kind of salty about their son's video game playing time. And he's trying to zero in on the middle-aged, suburban mom demographic.
And also, he's doing that with his, a few weeks ago, he did his child care plan speech, and you saw in the debate how he kind of agreed with Hillary on that. So he's trying to sort of he's trying to get people to give him a second look, because I think Hillary has been hammering him on how in the past he said some questionable things about women. Maybe they were in jest. I haven't looked too much into it, but I think if he can get people, mainly women voters, to give him a second look, he could sway some of them.
Well,
Now-
it would definitely be very difficult for Donald Trump to gain more minority and women votes. He has made a lot of quite controversial comments dealing with them, and I think it might take a minor miracle to turn that around.
Well, I think Donald Trump's popularity with minorities is somewhat helped in Florida by the popularity of senators like Marco Rubio, who himself is a Hispanic. He's right now up by 7 points in the Senate race.
I wasn't aware that Marco Rubio was supporting Donald Trump.
I wasn't aware he was still running for Senate.
Oh, he originally said that he wasn't going to run, and then he decided that he was going to run.
After, was it the Pulse nightclub shooting, I think?
Yeah.
The Orlando shooting, yeah. Interesting happening down there. A lot of debate about guns has come out of that, or debate about immigration. Either way, it's a very interesting and touchy topic. Anyone have any comments about it?
I believe Donald Trump's immigration policies are too tight, and he needs to loosen them if he's going to win in the smaller demographics.
In what way do you think that they're too tight?
Just his idea of creating a immigration police force to get rid of all illegal immigrants.
Well, we already have one.
It's
And,
called
Yeah.
ICE.
And let's not forget
just
the
trying to
elephant in
expand
the
it.
room. The wall that Donald Trump proposes on building,
Do you have any fun thoughts about that, Niels?
I really don't see the wall as feasible. It would take quite a large amount of money, and it wouldn't be as effective as a larger border patrolling force anyway. Not that I think that is needed.
Well, I think that there are many ways that we could pay for the wall. I mean, what he could do is first off, I don't think that he will be able to get Mexico to pay for 100% of the wall.
Oh, I forgot
But I
about
think that he could be able to get Mexico to pay for part of it, either through tariffs or when Mexican citizens apply for citizenship, whether that be they could get an increased tax, as it were, to apply for citizenship. That he could do it that way. It could be paid off in many different ways, and also I think that, well, yeah, that's it.
I like to think that Trump is his statements aren't as grandiose as he means, and maybe the wall is just by that he means severely increasing limits on immigration in the country and tariffs on Mexico, as well as the trade deals, rather than actually building a 10-foot wall.
So you think his wall is metaphorical more than factual?
I don't think that a legitimate wall would be completely feasible, just because the price estimates for it that are in the tens of billions of dollars, and we don't have that kind of money to spend on walls. So
Certainly not with his tax plan.
exactly. So I like to think that it's more of just a like a stronger stance rather than like a physical wall.
It does sound like he's proposing a physical wall, though.
Yeah, I think,
And to go back to earlier, how Mexico is going to pay for this wall, what incentive would Mexico have to even partially pay for this wall?
we could, well, right now we have a huge trade deficit with them. We have, I think it's like $59 billion. We could renegotiate it so that we could put tariffs on it, which would obviously hurt the Mexican economy. So there, we have a lot of leverage over Mexico. So, yeah,
I mean,
I think
If we
we
decide to renegotiate it, is there any assurance that these tariffs will go through? Mexico, after all, does have a say in this as well.
Personally, I think that for like a immigration law, which would go hand in hand with the tariff, but I think that like if you look at Mexico's immigration law, if like say an American citizen goes into Mexico, you can get arrested and then deported. And if we made that same stance, which is what Trump is trying to do, is we could just take Mexico's own law and just make it our own, and then that would be extremely
That is our
conservative.
stance, though. If someone comes
No,
into,
It is, except that,
deport them.
It's
I
just not-
don't mean to cut you off.
It just needs to be enforced.
Yeah, the current, as it stands, our current immigration policy is that when people come over, if they're illegal, we can deport them. Traditionally and practically, we don't have the resources to deport them, so the government decides to focus on those who have committed crimes and those who are involved with the drug trade, which again is a crime, rather than just taking down like farm workers
Or refugees.
or refugees. Now, that's a good point. There are some refugees coming out of Latin America. For the most part, they're not Mexican. Most of the refugees are coming from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, which are heavily involved with gang violence. Have you all heard of? Yes, the drug trade goes hand in hand with gang violence. Have you all heard about gangs like Barrio 14 and those fellows? Do you think that we could cut down on immigration by cutting down on violence in Central America?
I think we should do that anyways. It's the right thing to do.
But there's another side to consider to this. We'd have to figure out a good way to do it. Not like Iraq or Afghanistan.
We can't create a larger mess than the one we're trying to prevent.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think nation building is the solution. I think one of the ways that we could possibly cut down on the violence and the drug trade that's affecting Southern and Central South America is by legalizing marijuana and such, because what our current laws do is it pretty much creates a monopoly where the only people that can afford to either send or grow marijuana and send it to the United States are the cartels. So if we make it so that there's competition and it can be regulated, then we can make it so it's safer. It's not as it's safer, and there isn't this whole violence involved.
Now,
I don't know. if I
neither. Hear me out for a sec. Neither major presidential candidate supports legalization of marijuana. Hillary Clinton's daughter today said, Chelsea Clinton, she said that Hillary would take a stronger stance against marijuana, and I believe Trump has come out just against marijuana in general. Now, both of the two third-party candidates that have gained traction, Jill Stein from the Green Party and Gary Johnson from the Libertarian Party, who are polling at 4% for Mrs. Stein and 8% for Mr. Johnson, they have both come out in favor of legalization of marijuana on a federal level. Does this affect your opinion of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?
Not in the least, but it should not be
Not
legalized.
really. And exactly how much would the legalization of marijuana assist in defeating the drug trade? Marijuana is far from the only drug that is trafficked. There's also cocaine and heroin, and the consequences would be very far-reaching if those were legalized in the United States.
If
Well-
anything, legalizing marijuana would lead to an increase in cocaine and heroin due to its gateway drug status.
Well, I think that the whole idea that you make it illegal so that more people won't go and use the drug is sort of like is not a good way to base off a law, because there's heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. They might be bad. They're not affecting anyone else but that individual, and I think that they should have that right to be able to decide what they do with what they're doing. And I just don't buy that thing where more people will do it, will do these drugs if it's not illegal.
But if it's legalized, it would be infringing upon their rights to force them to seek treatment for addiction.
I tend to think that I'm not extremely like pro legalization of drugs, but I'd like to think that the possible like criminal penalties for possessing or like in use of marijuana could be lessened a bit, because if you look at like the statistics,
That we agree on.
if you look at the statistics, like the drug use enforcement is tended to be biased against those of like lower class and African Americans.
The war on drugs has failed to prevent the use of drugs simply because of the way we treat the people. They just simply go back into using the drugs immediately after.
I think an even bigger problem than the problem of legalization of marijuana is the opioid crisis that America's in, because I think that's a much bigger issue that's definitely needs to be solved like more radically than marijuana.
Well, I think that a good place to start would be decriminalizing these drugs and instead making them apply for treatment. Putting someone in jail for using a drug is not going to stop them from using that drug as soon as they get out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with that statement.
Now, marijuana has been shown by various studies not to have any like adverse health effects besides like problems with reproduction in like more advanced individuals. How does legalization of marijuana differ from decriminalization?
Well, decriminalization would be, you wouldn't have to go to jail for being caught with marijuana, but you would be made to go seek treatment. But legalization, it means that you couldn't force them to go to treatment. They could have marijuana, they could smoke it, they can do anything they want.
Yeah, I think if you completely legalized it, then it would turn into like cigarettes, where it's like you see people doing it all the time. But I think decriminalization is, if you were caught with it, they'd say like you need to get some sort of help, rather than like we're gonna put you in jail for a certain amount of time and then you're gonna get out and just continue doing it.
Now, why aren't cigarettes treated in the same way as marijuana or cocaine or heroin?
Well, I'd hate to be the person who brings up big business, but yeah, the tobacco industry has funneled a lot of money into lobbying against actions like that.
And it is slowly starting to become less and less acceptable in society by creating non-smoking areas, and you're not allowed to smoke inside public places anymore.
Smoking's at like the lowest rate in teens that it's ever been. I think it's like below double digits. So there's been progress.
Now, Niels, do you see that lobbying as a problem? And if you think it is a problem, what would you do to fix it?
Well, everyone does have the right to lobby. It's just unfortunate that people will lobby to keep things like cigarettes obtainable, easily obtainable, at least more obtainable than other drugs. But there's nothing legally we can do to stop them without stopping other people. Just because I disagree with their opinion doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to state it.
Okay. I was hoping you'd take the bait right there, personally, but that's great. So back to the debate on
Looks like we both stepped out of our roles as far left and center.
yeah, interesting. So
You offered the bait and I didn't take it.
I know I was really disappointed about that.
He's like the moderator at the debate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
yeah. He was a little biased,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
He
I
didn't
have to
bring up
agree.
Benghazi, but also can't really blame him for that because neither did Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that he probably was expecting a question to be asked on it, so he just didn't bring it up, and he kept waiting and waiting,
Well,
and then the debate ended.
But yeah,
I've never
he
known
only
Donald
got
Trump to
he
be
only
a
got through
patient
six-
man.
3 out of 6 possible topics, and he tended to offer questions to Hillary that were less. I don't know. They were easier for her to answer rather than on Trump. He did ask some harder questions that were more like offensive
But-
on the defense.
But even when it wasn't like Trump's questions that were like targeted against him, he was always on the defensive. I felt in the debate.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I'd say probably around the 30 to 40-minute mark is when he switched to defensive, because I think when he was talking about the economy, he was just pounding Hillary. He got some great one-liners in there when it was like, when he said, was it President Obama's fault? I thought that was one of his high points in the debate. And then after that, kind of went down low.
One-liners are great and all, but in the end, the better president is the person that makes sound, solid decisions and has a good grasp of policy.
Now, do you think that Hillary Clinton would do a better job at that than Donald Trump?
Most definitely.
absolutely.
Cite some examples. Do you think that she's made excellent policy decisions?
Well, we are comparing her to Donald Trump. She does seem to have
Good
a
point.
calmer temperament. She has proposed many different policies, while Donald Trump has resorted to a very famous few. And overall, she seems to just act more presidential.
She has yet to make large, generalized, sweeping statements about large minorities.
I don't know if I'd exactly say that with the basket of deplorables and all, but
And her most
Good
recent
point.
one, she said something about Bernie Sanders supporters. Oh, I forgot what it was. There's a leaked tape in the like recently that where she said that Bernie supporters were sitting in basements complaining about the world, and that like they were. It was essentially another deplorables comment, but targeted against the far left instead of the far
Yeah.
right.
that comment might actually hurt her. I mean, the people she targeted in her basket of deplorables statement, there wasn't really a chance that they were going to be voting for her anyway. But the Bernie supporters, those are who she has to win over.
I think that her basket of deplorables comments, though, that was sort of a rallying cry for Trump supporters and those moderate Republicans who were still on the fence about voting for Trump. I think that only energized his base. Did you disagree with that?
Yeah, do they-
Well, if that was the entire statement, then I might agree, but it's what she said afterwards. The other half are people who feel like their government has failed them and that the economy is on the decline. Those are the people we have to reach out to let them know that we're here for them.
I think that both candidates have made pretty bad remarks in the past. They also made poor decisions, but I think that the way that like the presidential race is going to be decided is who can show in the next 2 debates that their temperament as well as like composure is better than the other. I think that in this debate, neither one was very good, but I think that Hillary was less bad at her temperament, and she seemed a little too scripted.
Now, considering that America is going to have to decide in the future who they're going to vote for, I think why don't we wrap this segment up by deciding who you guys are going to vote for. So if the election was held today, Niels, who do you think you would vote for?
I'd vote for Hillary Clinton.
Marcus?
I'd vote for Hillary.
John?
Donald Trump.
Jack?
I'd probably vote for Gary Johnson.
I think I would also support Gary Johnson.
Well, after the Aleppo comment, and in fact he couldn't name a single foreign leader that he respected.
That is where Gary lost me. I was going to originally
Yeah.
vote for him, but not anymore.
Well, very interesting. This has been Cohasset Political Society's TV show. I'm Abby Tierney, and thank you for tuning in.